Today, I'm talking with Mark Cohen, president and founder of Centerpoint Commercial Properties, a boutique commercial real estate firm based in the Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas market. Mark is a fourth-generation real estate owner and operator whose family has been in North Texas market for more than 75 years. He started Centerpoint in 2001 after working with both big and boutique brokerage firms and has closed over 1,000 transactions across more than 200 properties. Centerpoint is a full shop service. Now they handle capital, brokerage, development, and property management with a big focus on retail centers and value add projects across Texas. Now in this conversation, we're going to talk with Mark's journey, how he built Centerpoint, what he's seeing in the retail market today, and how technology and AI is changing the way experienced operators run their business. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. You're welcome. Now, Mark, you're a fourth generation real estate owner and operator in North Texas. Now, how did growing up around real estate shape the way you think about business today?
Well, funny enough, I didn't get into real estate for the reasons you would think. As a kid, I grew up looking at my dad sitting in his office, rocking back and forth in his chair, opening his mail, talking on the phone, going to lunch and making money. And I said, I could do that. That's a job for me. So went off to college. I got a real estate degree and a finance degree. I almost got a construction management degree because I always just liked it. And funny enough, full circle, we've come back to that, but that's probably part of a future part of the discussion. But yeah, so I graduated, jumped into brokerage for third party companies, just big brokerage house, jumped in, learned the trade. Day one, there's your desk, there's your phone, good luck. Really not a whole lot of guidance. And, I was always a little bit more of I didn't like having actual jobs. I always liked doing projects and doing things. So I asked a couple of guys what they would do. And then I was off to the races and just started independent. So I didn't have a whole lot of support per se from that big company. They had some resources. So that kind of took a couple of years doing that. And, eventually, it kind of led me to where I am today. But yeah, that's kind of how I got started. Never really knew exactly what it was involved or what was involved, what it would take. I really, was hoping to have a job out of college, but I ended up being straight commission the day I started. So I graduated college and I've never had a paycheck per se since. So it was a little hard for my wife when we first got married because, how do you plan your life out when you don't know what you're going to do? I'm like, yeah, you kind of have an idea, but, she's gotten used to that over the years.
Yeah, I definitely started off straight commission, builds character, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna sink or swim, and you have to do it. So I'm working with a commission only with the big box, big and small brokerages. What was that exact moment that you said that, I can do this on my own and just decide just to split and start your own company?
I kind of always had a vision once I was in it, for a while that, somewhere I'd be working with the internal stuff, with our internal portfolio. I wasn't at that time. I was totally independent, totally on my own, scrapping it out. And I think, and I tell this to a lot of young people that get into our business is that you have to give it 2 years. You will not make very much money for 2 years. You make a little bit, and then you get to about 18 months and you're ready to quit and you're just tired of it. The deals you thought were happening didn't happen. You're not making enough. You keep getting, stuff that looks like is the golden ticket blows up, and it's harder than it looks. And so I was like, you can kind of push through over 2 years. You'll finally really start to see the benefit of your work. And then from there, it takes longer for other. It was probably around that time that I kind of started to get it. And then I was probably around, I did that for 2 years, went to another company. One of the guys that I worked closely with there, he left. So I went with him to a boutique firm. But again, everybody was doing their own thing. Nobody really did the same. We didn't collaborate. And so after about 3 years of that, after 5 years in the business, I started Centerpoint. Just to be, same guy I am at the other companies. I just a little bit more attention to service and worrying more about what's right. And then that's when we kind of got involved in some of our portfolios. And I remember the first deal, kind of clicked. is they have these tiny little spaces which are hard to find. You don't find little retail 500-600 foot spaces, at least not in DFW. You might in other
Hmm.
markets. They weren't getting very much rent, and the senior, the older guys that were, work with family, like, oh, you just can't get those you get those big high dollar rents down here. And I said, I know, but these tenants, I know what they're looking for, and they'll pay you a lot more, which for you is a lot more, but for them is still a deal because it's half the size of what they can find. So it's a win-win. And within no time, we were doubling rents on some of these little properties in some not so great areas. And so it was sort of an aha moment. And so that's kind of where this whole thing kind of turned and kind of became what it
Okay. All right. Now, Centerpoint, your company touches almost every part of the deal, from brokerage to leasing to development, construction management, property management, syndication, and capital. Now, how did your business grow from pure brokerage to a full service platform over time?
Well, I think it kind of built on what I just told you. We had some old properties that weren't leasing, and I said, "Look, we've got to get in here and rehab these." And so I didn't have carte blanche authority, but I went in and I did some rehab on an old building. And funny enough, my grandfather had built in 1955. We still had the blue, like the actual blue colored blueprints from the 50s that had like carbon copies and stuff. When they didn't have photocopy machines and printers. And so I took that, which we couldn't lease, had a lot of issues, and I rehabbed the whole thing. Um, and today it sits with two national tenants in it, and it's just, we put the money in, made the money back. It was already paid for, so it was a good investment. And now it just sends a check every month, and there's not a lot of maintenance on it. So that's kind of where it started, right? So we took that. I got a little construction under my belt, which was a natural progression. Like I said, I always wanted to get into construction. I never thought it would happen that way. And then we started the process of looking at older buildings in the portfolio and how to rehab them. It just kind of continued to grow. And then, you run into another deal and you start working with the city and you start finding other ways to navigate the process. And then you start looking at other projects you want to put together, may need more cash. And how do you do that? And we had some friends and family that had seen what we were doing and they wanted to invest. And so we opened up the market to them, and so that kind of leads to the syndication avenue. So now we've got construction and syndications and leasing and acquisitions. And then, of course, we're dealing with the engineers and everything to get that going. And then, um, you know, the growth from there just continued until it got to where we are today. And so every little piece of that was built off of that. And then, of course, from doing these, we were managing properties internally. We're not doing a very good job once I got into the numbers. So then we kind of launched a management platform. We're doing it for ourselves. And then we had clients who said, "Hey, we need help. Can you help us?" And so it all happened very organically. It was never intentional. And so, that's 20 plus years of history, squeezed in there in about 5 minutes. And that's kind of where we sit today. And now we had a gentleman that we were wanting to bring in that we had done some work with. He was bringing us investments. And so we wanted to kind of bring him in to do that. But he wanted to start a capital company. He'd been working on the capital side. So we brought him in to partner and run the capital division. So now we've got that element as well. And so it's all just a kind of a vertical integration of everything that we're doing to keep it all under one roof. So the only thing we need in here is an architect.
Yeah.
And
Okay, that's all. My next question was like, what else do you need? You say architect, and then you'll
yeah,
be
we've
complete.
been historically we've been really efficient by third party alliances. So we may go through periods where we don't need an architect, but we're not paying for one, right? I'd rather go ahead and pay you for your work. It may cost me a little bit more, but we use the same vendors, so we get preferred treatment, and so that helps. And we get favors done, and little stuff can get done without a big cost. And we just pay them for their work, but they're still free to go do what they want. So we'll pay probably half of what we'd have to pay to have a full time salaried person, but we have them when we need them. So it works. It works.
Okay. Now, on our pre-call, you mentioned, you're still a boutique and very hands-on with a small team. Now, how do you keep that boutique relationship driven feel while still handling a pretty wide footprint with multiple projects at once?
I think the key is making sure the people that you're with align in values. Our values are much more about relationship and um, uh, and caring for the clients than it is about the money. We learned a long time the money will come if you're doing it right. You've heard the expression, I'd rather teach a man to fish so he'll eat for a lifetime than give him a fish so he eats for a day. I may have gotten that backwards, but I'm
Understand.
sure you've heard that. So it's the same thing, if you're out just looking for a fee and trying to get paid today on a deal, yeah, you might make a lot of money, but is that group going to come back to you? So you might make a little less today, but when they're continuing to call, literally 5 minutes before we got on this call, I had a gentleman who I leased a building for 15 years ago. I haven't heard from him. Just calls me out of the blue and says, "Hey, I think their good tenant's going to leave. One of these tenants. You want to help me?" And I said, "Sure." Um, those are the seeds that you plant with those relationships that keep giving back to you unexpectedly. And so I make sure that everybody in here that we bring in gets that. It's a long game. It's not a short game. And so you have a skill, and then there is a learning curve, and sometimes there's some habits you have to break with people when you bring them in because they've been in either a toxic environment or that's just sort of the way everybody does it. We don't follow that philosophy. We do it kind of our own way. Maybe it makes us not as successful in certain elements, but it certainly A, helps you sleep at night, and B, makes working a lot easier because you're not working you're not working harder, you're working smarter.
I definitely like that with the relationship focused on what you guys are doing. Now, I know you mentioned doing rehab, so you're working on both ground up development and redevelopment across places like Greenville, Eastland, and the broader DFW region. Now, how do you decide when to scrape and build versus new when to rehab and reposition an existing center?
We rarely scrape it. We can work with it, even at the expense of having to do it. It's still way cheaper than building new. And if you go in with the understanding and expectations of sometimes it's a lot, you got to go in and put all new sewer lines in and pull all the walls and put all new electric in. It's still relative to having to, do site work and all that engineering and everything. It's just easier. And if you buy it right, which is the key part, we've done it enough where we kind of can back of the napkin tell you what it's going to cost to rehab, what kind of rents we're going to get, and then where we're purchasing an asset. And so that's just experience, right? So we just look at it that way and make a determination. Now, we may scrape some of it and add some others, but again, that just goes into the numbers of what ways can we maximize the dollars on the deal, but also um, be considerate of the existing tenants, because we don't really feel good about throwing people out on the street that maybe have been there a long time. So we're always looking for good solutions for good tenants, whether it be help them relocate or reposition them within the building and tear some of it down, to create a better synergy and a better environment for everybody to thrive.
Okay. Now, for your tenants, how do you guys go about and find tenants if the building say have a vacancy rate or anything like that?
Well, that's a hard one to answer, but I mean, we just know everybody. Having been doing it for so long, we've talked to so many different tenants. We track everybody. We go to trade shows and get new info. We know who the franchisors are. I mean, my kids laugh that I walk in a restaurant and there's no way that I'm gonna not talk to an owner or somebody that looks like an owner. I just, you just kind of know who's the top dog, and I'll pin that one down. If it was great, and talk to them a little bit, and then get into conversation and get a card. And maybe it doesn't lead to anything today, but listen, when we have something we think it's a good fit, then we can call them. And then there's a lot of marketing and a lot of ways to put stuff out on social media and other avenues, direct marketing to brokers and tenants, and other ways to find people that are in the open market. So it's just tricks of the trade. Technology is big with that. We started with technology before technology really was a thing in the industry, using it and taking advantage of it, and it was a big part of how we were able to grow and get a foothold in a very competitive market back in the early 2000s.
Okay, and that was one of my another questions going towards technology. Glad you brought that up. Now when we talked, you was running email campaigns back in the '90s, where most brokers weren't even thinking about digital marketing. But what did the early technology mindset teach you, and how does it show up in how you market and operate deals today?
Well, I think it's a broad stroke, right? In real estate, unlike, we'll just start with social media, right? For example, a broad stroke approach when you know, you're selling razor blades, everybody's a client, right? If you're selling t-shirts, everybody's a client. But if you're selling real estate, commercial, not residential, very limited amount of people are clients or potential, clients. And so your entire approach and everything about marketing and social media and how it works in almost every other industry doesn't work as a practice in commercial. But it's really about, like, I think the big thing that I've always said to some of these big companies that always want us to sign up and buy their service is that in reality, I don't need to pay somebody to reach all of the existing tenants. So it's important to cross promote and do things like you do with social media to gain some attention, but you got to get eyes on it. But when you're doing it through social media or through marketing of any sort, we're looking as much at the existing tenants, but also who doesn't have a store. How do you find that person who's thinking about opening a business? So you got an entrepreneur that's got some money that can invest in a store, because that's a lot of people do it out of the garage. They don't have a big overhead. They just have whatever equipment and whatever they're selling. In this case, you got finish out, and you got to pay water bill and electric bill, and you've got to hire employees and have your finish out and whatever else you got to put in there. And so you're looking for a very unique animal in that case to try to bring in. And so the open market is a very hard market to when it comes to marketing and digital media. It's a little easier when you're talking about people existing, because I can literally date myself. You could open the yellow pages and you could call everybody in the yellow pages, and those are all potential users. But it's the ones that aren't listed. Those are the ones that are the hardest to find, and those are the ones you're really pushing to. Because the people in the business, they're going to drive by and call you, right? If they're looking to expand, they're going to go physically look in an area. It's not often that you're just going to draw them in and say, hey, you want to make them aware of it, but most of the time they're already looking at that market to expand. So unless you're doing something unique and changing it, they already know about
Yeah,
it. So,
and yeah, that does. And so you mentioned people doing it out their garage. You mentioned in a past interview that, you said retail is not dead, it's evolving. Okay. Now, what does evolution look like on the ground right now in Texas? What type of tenants and centers are winning, and who's getting left behind?
well, location is key, but services have dominated. People in this market are still spending money on services, food, grooming, medical, personal wellness, things like that. What you're not finding is the clothing stores, specialty shops, the electronic stores, things like that used to be in every center. You can order a lot of those smaller goods on Amazon or on, Walmart or on Target or whatever retailer you like to shop or digitally. When you're looking for batteries or you're looking to, potentially get a TV, you're going to spend half your time looking on Amazon before you end up to one of the big retailers to see who's got the better deal. But can't get your hair cut online, can't get your nails done online, can't eat out online, although you can Uber Eats, still has to be a restaurant. So you're seeing the evolution of ghost kitchens. So instead of having a 3,000-foot restaurant, they can dummy it down to maybe 1,500 feet, have some seats, and then have the ability to go through Uber Eats or Grubhub and send food out, or just have a pure kitchen and no retail. So it's literally back of the house type stuff. There's no walk-in traffic. So you're seeing the changes. You're seeing a lot more restaurants. Used to be. It's still very competitive here, but funny enough, we're backfilling with things in the '90s and the 2000s. We didn't want gyms. They weren't good co-tenants, and now they're great co-tenants. So your big giant superstores for clothing and for electronics, they're closing. Appliances, they're all kind of consolidating into one spot. So that's really where it's evolved, but it hasn't died. It's just kind of moved, and the weight the pendulum swung where there's more of this than that, but it's still backfilling. Entertainment is huge, which it wasn't before. So a lot of those spaces get filled with some sort of entertainment, which we never saw before.
Yeah, that's true. Cause in Mansfield, for those outside Mansfield, Texas, outside of Dallas, there's a older shopping center has a restaurant, and used to have some other things, but now they're putting nail salons. They're putting medical centers. I'm like, okay, it's a scalp center, scalp. So everything look like it's becoming a medical and a restaurant
Mhm.
type deal. In other places, restaurant, men's center. So it's all that is the evolution of the retail centers.
Yeah, and one of the things, we studied the medical side for a little while. We were looking at that is this transition because medical and retail haven't. They're starting to figure out finally how to work together. But historically, if you're 50 or older, the doctor was wherever they could find an office, and it was around the back of the building, behind the tree, on the one parking space, on the back corner, looked like it's where the dumpster is. And now, you'd have to wait 3 days. You make an appointment, go see the doctor. And now, if you're sick, especially the younger generation, if I'm sick today, I want to see a doctor today. And while I do it, I'm going to go see the doc, go next door, get my meds that I need if I'm going to take anything, swing through Starbucks, grab a coffee, and then head on to whatever I'm doing for the day. So it's all in one stop shop. There's not the infrastructure for medicals on a lot of these older retails. So sometimes that's a little bit of a trick. It's a tricky step to kind of figure out how to solve that problem. But
Hmm.
and that's where they haven't really merged well. But that's what you're seeing trends. That medical's gone more retail for the reasons of its convenience, and people don't care who they see anymore. They just want to see somebody. They want to see them today. So
It's true.
it's just different.
Now, Centerpoint runs property management operations with modern software tools that keep up with data and accounting at your fingertips. Now, how has software changed the way you operate day to day, and what information do you absolutely want to see on your phone at all times?
Well, funny enough, so for management wise, what's great is the tenants can put in so they have with software, they have a portal, right? They can go in there, they can pay their rent. It instantly gives them credit. So we don't have to get a check, run to the bank. I mean, we do have a check deposit machine in the office, so we can do it from here. But I think we're almost 85% of our tenants now pay through the app. So we don't have to process their ledgers and enter that stuff in there. So efficiency is huge. Plus, we're not having to, run to the bank and take time to do that. And then as well, they can put in a request, which comes to us. And then we've got our vendors, preferred vendors in. And so if somebody says, hey, I got a roof leak, we can take it in. And then whichever one of our roof vendors we want to send it to, depending on where it is, we can literally take that information, package it up, assign it to them. They'll get an email. I mean, we'll still call them, but now they have all the notes right there, and then we can track it and then turn around, check in, and then in a week go back, go, hey, this was on there. Did you go by? And they're like, they can tell you what's going on. And additionally, we now use the software. We'll actually pay our bills electronically. And so that is probably a wash because they charge you for every check. But in the end, you realize by the time you put a stamp, right? Do an envelope, take the time to print the check, and then the labor or whatever that takes to run all that and stuff the envelopes, it's probably a wash. And so then that literally, we get an invoice that we can put it into the system, we can scan it in, it reads it all, puts everything in place, you double check it, say yes, click pay now, and it's gone. And in 3 days, they'll have their money. So just efficiencies with the technology is huge, is allowing us to cover more ground in less time.
Okay. Now, as far as let's talk about AI now, what do you look, what you when you look at AI today, whether it's leasing, underwriting, property management, or reporting, what do you think AI, can actually help an experienced operator like you, and where do you think it's overhyped?
Well, it's definitely overhyped. There's a lot that everybody's using. There's a lot of great tools, but I think there's a lot of technologies, even for the last 20 years, that are overhyped. It should all be used as a tool, not as a replacement. The human element's still critical, always has been. People tend to email and text. Well, you're using effectively technology to communicate with instead of actually getting on the phone and talking to people. It's a good way to avoid face to face, conflict that people don't like. They're not always comfortable, and I think that's slowly becoming a lost art. So the young generation that's willing to get on the phone and go meet with people face to face is they're going to give. It's becoming a smaller and smaller pool, and I think they're going to find great success with that as they get older, because that's kind of going by the wayside. But technology in our business is tricky because there's a lot of human element to the thought process, right? I can't put in, I still have to manually enter what it's going to cost or what I think it's going to cost, because you're looking at it and it costs me different on this one than it does on that one, because it's totally a different construction element. And we could do something less expensive on this one, where this one's got to do a tear off and a total structural element. So we use it more to kind of help with the build than we do with the actual work. I've discovered, and I don't know very many people. We went and paid for Copilot with Microsoft, and it did not do much, and it was a kind of a disappointment. But we got stuck with it because we paid for the year, and then I started to realize when I had complex formulas, I could literally say, okay, how do I get this number based on that information, based on something else, and I can go pretty deep with with those variables to get the answer I need for this sheet. And it'll just say, well, here, you need this formula. And instead of me guessing and then playing with it and spending 45 minutes, I can get that formula in 5 minutes, pop it in, it works great, and then I can drag and drop and then continue on. So again, as a tool, not a replacement, but you have to be able to prompt it. And that's the thing. I think the hard part is it learns, but the AI is hard. I think the AI has helped us with uh, some of the entry of creation of information, like when we're uploading our property marketing information that's got some basic info, we have an AI component in there that will actually rewrite that into the description, and then it will go search for data, market data, to really beef that description up, which helps with that entry. So it really presents well on the website with a nice description, and it helps, write that for you, and then you just tweak it to fit. So that's kind of how we're using it. We're looking at some other tools, but there's still a ways to go. And I think everybody's, it's the big buzzword. And I think a lot of times it doesn't do quite what you need it to do. But it definitely, it's exciting about the potential of what it can do. I love that, it's transcribing our voicemails and giving us summaries and allowing us to connect that to our database and our CRM to keep track of data. So there's history more than it is data. It's just history for us, being able to go back and remember what we're doing and connecting things. So that's kind of where we're seeing it and we're using it at this point.
But yeah, I agree. AI is a tool. You have to have the human element. It just can reduce the time that it takes you to do some things, and especially real estate. Real estate is a people
Yeah,
business, and so
very much
AI
so.
is AI is not going to replace that, but it's just the tools to help you streamline a process if you need it or not. I mean, I use it sometimes. I can input, something I don't understand. For example, something medical that's the doctor may have gave me. I throw it into Chat GPT, say, hey, decipher all these words. It's mean as a fifth grade level.
Absolutely.
It'll do it. All right. So the next thing I like to do is do a fun fire round question, 6 questions. All right. In Dallas, all right. When you're not in a meeting, what is your favorite local spot in the DFW to grab food?
If I can get in, Chris and John's.
Chris and John's, where is that located?
It's now at Campbell and Preston, and it's a Vietnamese street food, and it's life changing. It is so good. It is so good. So
Okay. All right. All right.
the
Well, I'm glad I
Forita,
asked you that question because I like to eat local.
everything's good in there, but the Forita is phenomenal.
Okay. Now, you're a big math fan. Who's your all-time favorite math
Mark Aguirre.
and why? Okay. Mark Cohen, and why?
I was a kid, and I'm early '80s, and he joined the Mavs, and then just was this. I mean, he was unbelievable, and I was able to go to the games, as a kid, and so, I was number 24 for years, And funny enough, there's a game coming up where they're going to honor him. So I'm trying to get tickets for that. And that's pretty exciting. So I go with a buddy of mine. We have some tickets that we go to every year. And so we're going to go buy some special ones for that one just to go to that game.
Okay, yeah, Marco McGrath was a pretty good player. Now, who's the Mavericks playing that night?
Win. I think they might be playing the Timberwolves. I can't remember. It's not really a big game. It's a weeknight game, but
Mhm.
I mean,
Okay,
I'll go for any game. But
but especially that one. Okay, all right. Now, I probably know the answer to this. If you had to pick one up for the rest of your career, construction development or broker leasing, which one are you choosing?
probably construction. I like that. I don't know. I'm a project guy, like I said. So I like getting my hands dirty, and I'm not afraid to go out. Not that I do it anymore, but I love swinging hammers. So I definitely do that.
Okay. Now, yeah, I figured after a conversation, that's which one you was gonna pick. Now, the perfect day with the family or friends in Texas, what does that day look like for you?
Easy going. We get up, probably make breakfast. Have people around the house, um, sit by the pool. Maybe have some drinks or have some fun, play some games, and then maybe do a long, slow brisket cooking out on the smoker, and then have big dinner late in the day. But that'd be a great day, just
That's
easy.
awesome. You said it what?
I said just easy going.
Easy going. All right. Now, one place you traveled that you think everyone should visit at least once.
Spain, Spain. We just came back from there. First time I went last summer, and so far my favorite place. Just
All right.
everything about it's great. The food's good, the quality of life is good, just the feel, the vibe, just a friendly place, good wine.
Okay. Now, if you could put one short message on a billboard on the Dallas North Texas North Tollway for every owner and investor to see, what would it say?
Every owner and investor to see. Man, that's a tricky one. I would probably say, I think my message would be don't do what everybody else is doing. Do what you know is right. And I think, and that comes from the fact that I think everybody jumps on the bandwagon of what everybody, it's kind of like the trend. And I think if you have your standards and you have your understanding of whatever it is that you're doing, you stay in your lane and you do what you do is best and don't get distracted by everything that everybody else is, because a lot of times they're doing it wrong because they're following somebody else who's doing it wrong. And maybe making a lot of money today. I mean, you go back to 2007 and look at everybody was doing loans, and it did make a lot of sense to a lot of banks. And funny enough, you see the ones that made it through that crisis. And so it's same philosophy. You just we have a phrase here. We say it gets out of the railroad tracks. We stay on our tracks, and when something comes in sideways and doesn't make sense, there's probably a reason. So we try not to get distracted. So that's kind of what I would put as a message.
All right. Good
Not
deal.
all that.
Now,
The first stuff. Not the whole thing. That's long.
nah, nah.
You can read that driving
That's the
by.
that's the explanation of it. I got it. Now, for one, what other advice would you give for a young investor or someone who wants to start their company within the real estate or the commercial industry? What's one advice you would give?
Well, I said it earlier, right? So if
Yeah.
you want to get into the business, well, I think anybody getting into the business needs to understand the underlying of what works. You can't just start investing in real estate and say, "Oh, well, I know what I'm doing." I mean, we understood what tenants would lease before we started buying because we understand that, right? Having done all the deals. And so if you get into brokerage, I think I've said it, you have to give it at least 2 years. You will not make very much money, live at home, roommate, live well beneath your means. Don't spend what you make because you may not make any more for 6 months. And then get to 2 years to make money. You need to get 5 years to get good at it. And you need at least 10 years before you kind of hit the matrix and the green screen with all the numbers coming at the end. If you remember that scene
Mm,
where it makes sense and you just get it. And it's a time game. There's no matter how much you do, just time and experience is the only thing that makes you good at this business. You'll get lucky early, and if you get in with the right group, you'll make some money. But you got to be entrepreneur. You got to be, and you have to have a work ethic. If you're not willing to put in 60 hours a week for your first 2 years, it's going to take you a long time to be successful. But anybody could do it. There's people a lot smarter than me making a lot more money. This isn't a hard business. It's just you just got to have a work ethic.
That's some great advice. Great advice. Now, Mark, this has been great. I really enjoyed it. I appreciate you just walking us through your journey, how Centerpoint is thinking about retail, redevelopment, and technology in today's market. For people listening and want to learn more about you and Centerpoint Commercial Properties, where should they go online or how should they reach out?
Well, our website at centerpointcp.com has all our contact information. There's email addresses, phone numbers. We're easily accessible. So we'll always pick up a call. So anytime somebody wants to talk, I'm happy to visit with them.
All right, great. Now to anyone listening, thank you for joining us on the TrueBix podcast. If you got great value in this episode, make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share with another investor or operator who needs to hear it. We'll see you on the next episode. All right. Thanks, Mark. It's been wonderful.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed it.
Enjoyed it.